Hey everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And today I'm going to be asking the question about whether Polish tanks suck inside World of Tanks. I'm going to be playing 4 games in a row, and these games were all literally in a row during one of my Tech Tree showcases. I'm going to be starting at Tier 5, I'm going to be playing Tier 5, 6, 7 and 8. So without further ado, I think that you should really try and start the Polish Tech Tree at Tier 5. Because all of the vehicles underneath this, they just have really poor damage per minute. And unless you're talking about the Tier 4 tank and you want to use the little autoloader on that vehicle, which makes it so unflexible at decent distances, I think the first tank that's actually really worth even thinking about along the Polish Tech Tree has to be the 25 TP. And funnily enough, it's the first medium tank along the line. Along the Polish Tech Tree, you start with 4 light tanks, and then you evolve into 2 medium tanks, and this is the first one of them. The 25 TP is actually a complete breath of fresh air when you get it fully unlocked. And that's because this tank stock, as I found out on my free-to-play account, is possibly one of the worst things I've ever had to do in gaming history. I literally would almost not recommend even bothering to go and play this vehicle until you've actually got about 10,000 free experience to be able to burn on the tank. I'm not saying to convert gold, just try and maybe find some free experience boosters, try and play your vehicles that make a lot of experience, use those boosters and try and get those 4 times, those 5 times experience games during events, and hopefully manage to pick up a premium day somehow, some way, and then you can really start to earn yourself a lot of free experience. And that's because this tank stock is just so horrific. Its gun, it uses the same gun, the little pop gun that you had on the previous vehicle, but it can only go 400 meters. I think it has only got about 53 millimeters of penetration. And what are you really going to do with that? You're not really going to do too much. And so a lot of people, when they first get this tank, think, oh my lord, I've suffered to get to Tier 5 in the Polish Tech Tree, and I feel like I'm suffering at Tier 5 in the Polish Tech Tree. But really, when you unlock the top gun on this tank, the 75mm, you start to have a pretty decent vehicle. And also when you unlock the top engine on this tank, and that's because the power to weight ratio is just under 19. Combine this with a 75mm with decent penetration, 135 on its standard rounds and 175 on its premium rounds, and yeah, you're starting to look like you've got a pretty darn good gun. With 56 kilometers an hour forwards, 20 backwards, and just enough armor at the front of the tank to be able to take high explosive hits. The armor is 45 on the hull on the front, 40 on the side, and 80 on the turret. So that's quite similar to, for example, the T-34 at Tier 5, right? No one would say that has terrible armor, but also doesn't really have incredible armor. I'm not saying that you want to sit in front of vehicles with decent penetration in this tank. But what I am suggesting, however, is that when there's that looks on the enemy team and he looks at the front of your vehicle as if it's a big tasty snack, you're probably going to ricochet at least a few rounds out of the 300 damage that he's going to be putting at you. And just having enough armor is a very useful thing in World of Tanks, especially with the amount of high explosive derps. You might be able to take a shot from that and not get penetrated altogether. Alright, so at 25 TP at the start of this battle, we've managed to pick apart some vehicles on the enemy team. The Sal-42 fell to us. We've managed to now flank across, and now we've got ourselves into a great position here where we've got lots of opportunity to be able to deal with, firstly, the STVZ-39, and now we're going to deal with, talk about the devil, right? A Lux. And now hopefully we're going to get behind a KV-222, and you'll see that I'm instantly loading the gold for this guy. That's because that KV-222 is probably one of the most filthy seal clubbers in the game. That thing has KV-3 hull armor at Tier 5 with preferential matchmaking. The only true weakness of the tank, of course, is the turret. And so if you don't have high penetration or you don't have access to gold rounds, then you definitely want to be firing at the turret of the KV-222. You might see a few more of those coming out around Christmas. They're probably going to be in Wargaming's advent calendar. They always love to sell those overpowered tanks for about 50 euros. So if you do see one of those tanks, then shoot it in the turret. It's pretty much got a stock KV turret. And its penetration is also weak as well, so definitely try and take advantage of that. But anyway, let's not focus on overpowered Tier 5 Soviet premium heavy tanks. There's enough of those in the game. Let's focus on the 25 TP. So we're really just doing what a generic vehicle would do in World of Tanks. We're getting to where we need to go, we're engaging our opponents, we're trying to shoot them around corners, trying to shoot them in the back, trying to lock down their tracks, trying to focus the most dangerous tanks on the enemy team who are playing recklessly like the KV-220, and then hopefully just managing to pick apart some kills at the end of the game against this T-67. There you go, and will we get our 5th kill as well? Oh yeah! That's a clean game for the the 25 TP. And this vehicle truly is the first one along the Polish heavy tank line that just doesn't suck. But it definitely does suck when it's stock, so watch out for that. Save that free experience, unlock it, or just try and grit your teeth and bear it through some daily doubles and hopefully try and spot for your team by using your binoculars. So a decent round here for a decent tank. It was a high caliber, it was an ace tanker for 949, showing you just how badly this tank is played. If you can get an ace tanker with sub 1000 base experience points, that means this thing is a bit of a stinker, at least in the hands of most players, because most players will struggle because it's literally one of the most horrific stock grinds I've ever had in gaming history. Nevertheless, we make some decent credits here with or without a premium account. The 25 TP is probably worth keeping along the Polish heavy tank line if you want to move this crew into the Poodle, because the Poodle is, obviously if you have the tier 6 Polish premium medium tank, you're going to want to have a crew in a regular vehicle to be able to put inside it, and I think it's probably best to keep them in the 25 TP. Ooh, with that said, let's check out the tier 6 Polish medium tank. Alright, so now we are in the 40 TP, and this vehicle, it definitely looks a lot more like a heavy tank than a medium tank, and truly it is. This is more of a bridging gap between the medium design that you had at tier 5 and what will eventually become your first heavy when you play it at tier 7. So the 40 TP, inside a matchup like this, can actually kind of play a bit more like a heavy tank. It's not the fastest tank in the game, so you don't want to try and use it to cover great distances in a short amount of time or leave yourself exposed to enemy fire. And when you play this thing stock, it's definitely very slow, and the turret doesn't really work on the tank all that well stock. But when you get the thing fully upgraded, you've got the top turret, you've now got yourself 360 meters base view range. Combine this with a pair of binoculars, and the way that I like to make the 40 TP work is to try and play it as a mid to long range support vehicle that can get stuck into some combat if the situation dictates it. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to set up our view range. And the main highlight about the 40 TP when you have this thing fully unlocked is that you get a 90mm main armament. Now, I would say that this is really special, but the Italian medium tanks went into the game first, and the tier 6 Italian medium tank also has a 90mm main armament, and I think that it's all round probably the better vehicle because it's not nearly as slow as the 40 TP is. And I do love that tier 6 Italian medium tank. It's something that I've kept on my free-to-play account as well. But that doesn't mean that the 90mm on this tank doesn't work. Oh, but with accuracy like that at 0.4, yeah, it's definitely not great news for the tank. But oh, come on! I should have hit that one. Yeah, you can see I do a spin of frustration there that we don't hit the M4A1. But it was a bit of a poor shot there. I didn't expect him to use his repair kit so quickly. I could have aimed more towards the central mass of the tank and I would have been able to hit him. But really, this is what I like to do in the 40 TP. Use that 90mm to hopefully be able to bludgeon your opponents. Get hitting them for 240. People expect tier 6 medium tanks to have 130 alpha or 150 alpha or at most 180 alpha. They don't expect them to have 240. So when you just take off huge chunks off your opponents, that's a tier 6 light tank on the enemy team that just lost pretty much half of their hit points as we roll for 272. Now I'm going to venture forward to see if I can manage to catch another shot on him, but we don't quite manage to catch the T-37 before he pulls back around the corner. So what we want to do right now is just keep our frontal armor towards our opponents, just try and spot out, but don't want to fully engage until we know it's right. And there you go, we see the ELC AMX actually shoots us from this bush location here, so we're going to try and blind fire the player. Actually, no, I don't, because I see that there's a Wolverine coming around the corner, and I thought that he was a more important target to shoot. He fires a premium round right through the front of our tank, and we get really unlucky that our shell goes to the left of our reticle, so we don't hit the guy on the cheeks, but instead we hit him on the mantle, so the shell gets absorbed. But that doesn't matter because the heavy tank number 6 on our team shuts down the Wolverine. Alright, so it looks like our team has managed to win the East. So I'm going to now try and be aggressive now that we know that the ELC AMX has actually left the bush there. Alright, ELC AMX won't be spotting me as quickly, so now is my chance to be able to penetrate through the center of gosh, I even forgot the map. What is it? Lakeville. Of course it's called Lakeville. Goodness gracious, there's a big lake to your right, you potato. Get it right. So yeah, we can penetrate through the center of Lakeville here and hopefully catch this T-37 ill-prepared. Ho, 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 ho. Yeah, that's easy pickings. We're not even going to stop. There's a TOG at the back of the map. And was that because of the Tog Apocalypse that I had with Jingles on Saturday? Perhaps, possibly. Maybe that's why QuickyBaby actually gave out all of the Togs, right? So that he could have easier games for his Polish Tech Tree showcase on the day after, right? No, not quite. But this is just showing you that the armor on this tank is definitely solid. It's got 90mm of frontal armor and 130 on the turret. So when you get yourself into a matchup like this, I'll pretty much sit in front of everything because I know I'm going to be able to outtrade them with the 90mm main armament. The standard penetration on this tank is fairly decent as well at 156 and 198 on its premium rounds. And there you go, shutting down artillery in a single shot. I will take that. So now up to 4 kills, 1,400 damage, and 1,900 spotting there against that delicious, tasty Tog snack. Alright, so the 40 TP now. Obviously, there's probably going to be an FV304. I put him probably at the back here. Probably the T67 is going to be sitting at the back here as well, although I'm not 100% certain, so I'm going to turn my tank to the left. Spot the FV304. Don't roll super high, so we don't secure the kill there. That means the top gun is off the table. But considering that the T67 hasn't been spotted, and he also just killed the Stug, that means he has to be round the corner here, right? Surely, there has to be a T67 here. So we're going to fire one into him on the move. He turns his tank towards us, and I have to admit, boys and girls, I decide to BM a little bit here. We raise our gun, and we ram the little tier 5 seal clubbing monster, the T67, to death. Classic game, immediately right after the game that we had in the 25 TP, I will take 4K combined in this tank any day of the week. Now look, is this a great tank? No, not really. It's definitely not a great tank. There are better tanks at tier 6 in all regards. There are better heavy tanks. There are better medium tanks. But if you get yourself into a nice matchup, there's not much that can go wrong with this 90mm main armament. And even if you don't get yourself into a nice matchup, you can still support your tank fairly well. Definitely, you have to just grit your teeth and bear it with the hull armor on this tank. The frontal plate will be able to take some shots, and especially against equal and lower tiered opponents, you just want to expose yourself, and you just have to make sure your shots count. And if you do that and you put yourself in the right position and play this thing not as a heavy tank, not as a true medium tank, but as a kind of a damage support vehicle that actually has the hit points and the armor to go in for those engagements when they sense a weak point, then you're probably going to do well in the 40 TP. So this was an even better race tank of 1,440 for that 4K combined, and we actually spotted 9 of our opponents, giving us a scout medal, showing you how important that top turret is to combine with binoculars to play that supporting role. And even a patrol duty medal and a high caliber as well. I will take that. Don't think we fired any premium rounds as well, so a decent profit with or without a premium account. This was definitely one of the better games for the tank, and I was just so thankful that it happened in the very next game for the vehicle, as you can see, with only an 11-minute gap between these 2 rounds. Considering we just got 2 aces in a row, I think it's about time to try hard in the first heavy tank along the Polish tech tree, the 45 TP Habika. Yeah, good lord, I thought the matchmaker was blessing me here when I played the 45 TP during the Tech Tree Showcase. To be in this tank with no artillery against tier 6 and tier 5 opponents, oh yes please. So what's the first thing that I'm going to do on mines? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is get my tank forward. Finally, we're a heavy tank. We now have 100mm of frontal hull armor and 170 on the turret. I can pretty much ricochet most enemy vehicles, not reliably, but more often than not, then they're definitely not going to be bouncing me. The main highlight of going up to the 45 TP is obviously having a much larger amount of hit points at 1,200 combined with this armor, and also when you get the 105mm main armament with 320 alpha damage, oh, you're definitely punishing your opponents. That Super Hellcat takes 330. The damage per minute of this vehicle at 1,745 base is definitely not too shabby either. So I'm going to make my way up on top of the hill, but I'm going to definitely take some pain for it. I was very surprised that bathtub actually managed to penetrate us there, but he did, and also the Super Hellcat gets some revenge as well. And a bit of a disaster here, and that's because the Super Hellcats quite rightly are trying to get away from this situation. And I don't manage to hit even 2 tanks that are pretty much snuggling there. Oh, I was getting rather frustrated at this stage of the game, ladies and gents, but hopefully we can manage to put 1 into the Super Hellcat there. And in a game where I think I should be up at above 1,000 damage or even 1,200 damage, I'm sitting below 700. So we're going to try and blind fire here, see if we can hit the Super Hellcat, but they are not there any longer. But we've already got a stranglehold on this map. We've taken the center. We denied the hill to the enemy, I'm pretty sure. that some of their lighter tanks would have liked to make their way up here, and the Super Hellcats would have punished my medium tanks from making their way up. But by putting our heavy tank in the center, especially when there's no artillery, then we're able to just dominate the most important location on mines. Alright, so now it's time to go see if we can hunt some T-150 over this ridgeline, and also possibly the VK-3001. But I'm just too slow. I'm just a little bit behind in this replay. And considering that I'm trying to go for my hat trick of ace tankers to try and, you know, keep the streak going during the tech tree showcase. Oh, I was getting a little bit frustrated at this point. Nevertheless, just because we can't shoot our opponents here, if we manage to flank around, maybe we're going to be able to get them from this alcove. And again, because there's no artillery, we can make these big, bold plays all across in the open, and we don't have to worry about too much. Oh, hello, VK-3001. Oh, man, that accuracy is definitely not great. The base accuracy on this tank is 0.4, but the dispersion values are actually quite bloomy. It's a bit weird. The tank's got 2.3 seconds aim time, but it's the hidden statistics of the tank that really matter. It's the statistics that Wargaming don't tell you about inside the garage for some unknown reason. Sometimes I really feel that with tanks, they try to portray them as having really good aim time, or they give them very good aim time, but they just give them horrific dispersion values to completely balance that out. And the dispersion values of this tank are 0.21 when moving and 0.16 when turning the turret. So that means that if you do anything in this vehicle, the reticle really does bloom out. And you can't use vertical stabilizers in a tank like this, so we're using binoculars combined with a... Oh, juicy shot there into the top of the ELC AMX, combined with a gun rammer and vents. And the binoculars on this tank, with its 350 meters base view range, are almost essential if you want to be spotting at decent distances. It's always weird when you go up a tier, but your view range goes down. Bizarre, right? I guess that's why we managed to get the Scout Medal and the Patrol Duty in the Tier 6 Medium, and we're definitely not going to be achieving that all that much in the Tier 7 Polish Heavy, the 45 TP. Alright, so we've managed to stop the enemies from advancing their flank. Now what I'm going to do is just manage to get my way into this bush. Maybe I'm thinking of getting spotted, but my sixth sense doesn't go off. That gives me the confidence to push forwards. And now I should hopefully be able to get a big old shell into the side of that Nashorn. 320 alpha damage just feels right at Tier 7. It's definitely, obviously, not as high as something as the KV-3 or the IS with their 122mm caliber guns. And 320 is definitely not special when you think that the T-29 also has that as well. Whoa, a juicy shot there over into the top of the 25 TP. Ah, poor, I feel bad after having just played that a couple of games ago, right? But yeah, the T-29 has 320 alpha damage, so this 320 on this tank just doesn't really feel awesome like that. I think the 45 TP, the only things that really hold it back are the fact that it's gun depression 8 degrees, the T-29 has 10, that's obviously a clear advantage. The turret on this tank as well, it's not as sturdy as the T-29, but it is very well angled, as you can see from the front, especially on the forehead. And that means that this tank doesn't have the capacity to be overmatched like the top of the T-29 tank can be. So that's clearly an advantage that the vehicle has. Alright, so my Super Hellcats are playing quite aggressively around the east. And as I mentioned in a video a few days ago, the worst thing that you can do is to let your allies die for no reason. So, I'm not talking about the dead tank that's in front of me. I'm not talking about making this T-34S useful, even though I kind of am making this T-34S useful by using his wreck to give me some cover to be able to punish the Tier 7 Czechoslovakian medium tank, the T-34-100 in front of me. I'm talking about that the Super Hellcats are pushing from the east, and so I had to get forwards. They're providing a distraction. I don't need to worry so much about the tank destroyers. I don't need to worry about the medium tanks below me. I can use them to be able to be aggressive, to be able to make a push. And at 3,300 damage, but no spotting and 3 kills. Whoa, are we going to be able to get the ace tanker? You know what, I was starting to feel a little bit confident, boys and girls. But maybe we still need to pick up 1 or 2 more kills at the end of the game here to truly secure it. Alright, so there's an AMD 178B trying to escape the best they can from those Hellcats. I'm not going to worry about him too much right now. It's just clean up aisle 6, seeing if we can manage to hit the VK-3001H. We don't, and we actually get penned by a Super Hellcat. Nice shot. Was that the Super Hellcat that I missed at the start of the battle? I think it was. I'm still looking across at the AMD, and now we bounce the Super Hellcat, showing you what this Tier 7 armor is all about. And unfortunately for me, the Super Hellcat gets killed by the Dickomax. I don't get any spotting. And then I miss the AMD. Oh, come on. There's no justice in this world, and we don't get any cleanup. Oh, it's going to be really close about whether we get the ace tanker to get the hat trick now. No, absolute disaster. We were robbed. It's just a first class medal for the 1,246 base experience points here for a high caliber. Don't think we fired any premium rounds in a matchup like this. Of course, we didn't need to make 45,000 credits profit with our premium account. I seriously think that just 1 or 2 more shots that went wayward inside this game and it would have definitely been an ace. Bit of a heartbreak, but let's not let it bog us down too much. Let's show you what all of the tier 8 Polish heavy tank is all about. Alright, now I was getting truly suspicious. How can I have so many games in a row with such nice matchmaking? You know what, I'm not complaining. It allows me to show you what these vehicles are capable of inside their top tier matchups. And Polish heavy tanks do very well in those scenarios. They don't have godlike armor, they don't have godlike guns, they don't have godlike mobility. They're kind of all-rounders. They're not slow, they're not super fast. They're kind of all-round heavy tanks. And if you use them like that, then they can perform incredibly well. Alright, so the 53 TP, what is this tank all about? Well, it looks a bit like a 110, it looks a bit like an IS-3 or an IS. It has that frontal slope that we can see on the front of the vehicle. Its turret looks truly Soviet or truly Chinese. And so this tank is an absolute wonderful vehicle because it has 8 degrees of gun depression and 122mm main armament with 420 alpha damage. And so this thing is just an absolute boss on a ridgeline, and it's really where the Polish heavy tanks start to hit their stride, in my opinion. The 45 TP at tier 7, it's a great tank, but I'd probably rather play the T29. The 53 TP, on the other hand, I honestly think it's probably one of, if not the best tier 8 heavy tanks in the game for a holistic player who wants to use its speed, its top speed of 40 kilometers an hour to race into position, its decent power to weight ratio to be able to get there, and more importantly, those 8 degrees of gun depression to be able to not have awkward scenarios where you have to overexpose your tank against your opponents, to be able to just work ridgelines and have flexibility to do whatever you need to do. It's also got 370 meters view range, so unlike the IS-3, it's not blind with 350 meters view range. So it's kind of a halfway point between the Chinese 110 and the IS-3, with the 110 having 380 meters view range. Definitely one of the highlights of the tank and one of the most underrated aspects of the vehicle, that if you get coated optics on that tank with a half-decent crew on the 110, you're definitely going to be out-spotting other heavy tanks, and it can allow you to really but just have so much more flexibility, because if you can see your opponents, then you can account for them, right? And you can manage to outplay them, or use that against something like an IS to just completely outspot them and be able to get an ambush on them. Alright, one thing as well about the 53 TP that is absolutely awesome is that while it's aim time for a large caliber gun, it's not terrible at 2.7. It's not bad for a 122mm caliber gun with 420 alpha damage. But the great thing about this tank are the dispersion values. Again, hidden statistics that Wargaming don't tell you about, so I'm going to tell you about them, alright? So the dispersion values on this tank are 0.18 when moving, but listen to this turret traverse dispersion, 0.1 flat. I believe the previous vehicle, I mean I just talked about it a few minutes ago, was either 0.16 or 0.18. Your dispersion values have literally halved, which means that you can turn the turret now without actually completely blooming the reticle. And so that means that even though the 2.7 seconds aim time on this tank is definitely not awesome, it's far from awesome, you don't ever really need to sit there for that long because your reticle never actually fully blooms out, which is amazing. So it allows you to kind of snapshot way better. And as long as you can kind of aim at larger, weaker points on the enemy vehicles, you don't really need aim time as long as you've got good dispersion values. And so that is why I absolutely love the 53 TP. It's definitely not a tank that I'm going to take out onto the battlefield constantly, because while I don't mind tier 8 matchmaking, I definitely feel like it can be hit and miss, right? You can either get into these kind of games where you're against tier 6s, or you can get into the tier 10 kind of games. I definitely think I prefer tier 9 a little bit more. I feel like the tier 9 tanks hit a huge power spike and have a little bit more variety in the game for me. And I think maybe I've also been a little bit burnt out with tier 8s inside front line. I'm not sure if anybody else feels like that. And because there are just so many premium heavy tanks in the game, it just doesn't almost feel right playing standard vehicles at tier 8 when you know that you could play a premium tank and make lots of crew training or just make tons of credits at the same time. But I digress. The 53 TP in its own right is statistically one of my strongest heavy tanks in the game. I seem to do so darn well in this vehicle, and I think it's just because it's a holistic tank. I never find that this tank is useless in any situation. I always feel like, oh my lord, okay, wow, that accuracy, that's 0.38 accuracy apparently, ladies and gentlemen, and I do have brothers in arms, and I'm using bread with smullets, so that was about probably 0.35 accuracy there or something like that, and that missed the KV3 broadside. Useless in any situation right now. That's just complete bad luck inside World of Tanks. That's RNG to the max. That's maximum RNG, boys and girls. Anyway, let me focus back on what I was talking about with the 53 TP, and that is that the tank is just absolutely gnarly. It can do everything, it can go everywhere. I honestly feel like I have a chance against tier 10s in this tank because I'm a holistic vehicle that can hopefully make outplays against them. As much as, you know, when you get into those tier 6 matchups, that this tank has enough armor on the front with 110 on the front of the hull, 80 on the side of the hull, and 210 on the turret to absolutely bully them. And that's what you want to have. You don't want to invest all of your skill points, so to say, in just having incredible armor at the sacrifice of having no mobility, because as soon as you get into those tier 9 and tier 10 games, then your armor doesn't really count for anything anyway, because they've got super high penetration or they're just going to load the gold. So what I like to do is to not have maxed out statistics unless you just want to play a tank for fun like the Tortoise. I like to have fairly balanced statistics across the board because I feel then that's going to make it a holistic tank, and then I can use it irrelevant of the matchup, irrelevant of the situation, and hopefully we can then use that to our advantage. So a bit of an unlucky shell there. I was thinking about overmatching the AMX M4 Liberté's top of the turret there as he was angling his tank down. And what I need to do right now is think about getting my way out of harm's way from the Liberté, shoot this T-34-85M, and hopefully he's not going to be able to shoot me in the back. And now I'm worrying about the Jagdpanther that's above me. I'm not too worried about the T-32. He might be on my left a little bit. But right now it's just about thinking, is that Jagdpanther going to use that bush above me to be able to engage me? And on 6 kills and securing a top gun, I was kind of hoping that maybe I could pick up a couple more in this game to be able to get a Radley Walters medal and make up for the lack of the ace tanker in the tier 7 tank when we were robbed. Oh, can you imagine it? Are we going to be able to get an ace inside the tier 8 as well? We're just going to have to wait and see. But oh dear, with the T-32 getting shut down and the fact that I haven't really been spotting for myself this game, it's starting to look a little bit dubious. And so, does this tank suck? No, it doesn't. Honestly, I think if you think this tank sucks, I think that you've got a serious problem with your gameplay. You're not making use of the 8 degrees of gun depression. You're not using the really good dispersion values, not using the mobility that this vehicle has. It is a fantastic, holistic tank. This vehicle is a quality pickup. Every single time I've played this tank, I've still just enjoyed it. I don't think I've had too many, or if any, games where I felt completely useless in the 53 TP. And I honestly think that the Markovsky Go is probably one of the most underrated tier 8 heavy tanks in the game. And I'm really looking forward to unlocking it on my free-to-play account. But again, another heartbreak. Apparently killing half of the enemy team and doing 4,000 damage in a tier 8 is not enough to get an ace. So, well, we'll have to deal with the top gun and the high caliber anyway. I'm not sure if we fired... Looks like we fired... No, it doesn't look like we fired many, if any, premium rounds this game. So this was a good profit with or without a premium account. But what more is there to say? I love the 53 TP. It's definitely one of the hidden gems along the Polish tech tree, at least in my opinion. And yeah, when you get to tier 9 and tier 10, I'm not going to talk about them in great detail now, but yeah, things kind of get even better still. Although slower, significantly slower, so watch out for that. Anyway, ladies and gents, that was 4 games in a row through the Polish tech tree to hopefully give you an idea of whether it's worth the grind. Hopefully it was useful, or maybe you just enjoyed it. If you did, give the video a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down, and let me know in the comments down below whether you agree or disagree with any of my opinions on each of these vehicles. Do you think they're all absolutely awful? Do you think they're all absolutely incredible? And if you really enjoy this style of video, I do this every single week from tier 1 to tier 10 during my tech tree showcases, so come along to one, see if you like it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.